when I consider this question, I think it's important to talk about that there's two pieces going on. There's the choir game number 1, which Zach put out. And as far as I can tell, the basic idea of choir game number 1 is that anyone can edit it and anyone may perform it. And it's all very optional. There's no requirement to perform. And then there's the other part, which I'm doing, which is where I've said I'm going to perform everything as best as I possibly can. And I think Zach's piece does engage with power a little bit, in that it engages with the power of the director to direct a piece of art, and he's abdicating all choices entirely to the audience, which is interesting. But it doesn't have the same coercive effect on the people around the piece as my choice to perform everything in the piece exactly as written. Because the piece can be anonymously edited by anybody, it, I think, tends to include antisocial impulses, and it has the will to, completely destroy society embedded within it. And by enacting that out, and saying I'm going to definitely do this, I'm taking that antisocial act just through the potential of that act. So I think that is a kind of dominating move on my part that Zach didn't intend on the piece. So it's an intervention on my part to actually perform everything in the piece. Whereas I think if I hadn't said I was going to do that, it would be a very different piece. At the same time, I mean, that's very dramatic, and the piece is just a game, and it doesn't say much about power at all for me to just do random silly things on YouTube. It's just like kind of like truth or dare. Like I'm just a classic person being like, oh, I'll do anything, I'll do anything. I'm brave. As for privilege, I am incredibly privileged. So everything I do is deeply connected to my position in the society as a white man. And I have other privileges other than that. I'm a white man that came from a relatively well-off background. And you can see my dad's house that I'm in right now, and it's a pretty big house. You can see it in a couple of other videos. And I have the privilege right now of some free time because I'm currently going to grad school at CalArts, and we're in between sessions, and I'm in between activities in the summer. And I don't have to fill up all my time working a job to feed myself right now. Partially that's because I worked a job previously that most people would find abhorrent, which is accounting and doing tax returns, which allowed me to build up quite a bit of savings. But even doing that, well, I mean, accounting is interesting. It's actually full of people which are from what other people would call underrepresented backgrounds, are people who lack privilege in the society, and it is a way for them to gain financial resources that they may otherwise have access to, because there's such a high demand for accountants and so few people want to do it. So I do think, at least in my anecdotal experience, among entry-level accountants, women are overrepresented and people of color are overrepresented. Obviously, it has the same glass ceiling effects that we see in other sectors of society, and as you move up the hierarchy in the accounting world, you see more and more white men dominating everything. But I still think my ability to also transition in and out of that career path is a symptom of my privilege and the social safety nets that surround me, partially due to my identity. If we consider Zach's portions of the piece, anyone can contribute to it and anyone may perform it. I think that is quite open-ended, although it's still connected to privilege, just because in the social circles that we run, it's more likely to intersect with privileged people. And again, privileged people just have more bandwidth to engage in this silly flight of fancy that is this piece. So our relationship to these things as humans in a society, I think I've gone over that a little bit. The piece has a kind of malignant effect in the society, and it reveals malignant aspects of the society through the anonymity of the editing of the document. Yeah, at the same time, I think it's not so bad. it allows people to express just little desires they have and get them out in the world. And it is just a game and a fun little time. One thing that I like to put in there, I don't even know if this answers this prompt correctly, is that my action in this piece, performing everything in there, is kind of a perverted take on the Marxian slogan, from each person's ability to each person's need. Of course, what people put in the document is very rarely something that they actually need. Although they could have me be doing valuable work for society, and I think it's interesting and perhaps reflective of the privilege of the people engaging with the piece that I'm just doing a bunch of pointless stuff instead of, going to volunteer at charities and things like that, which could very well go in there. Although it's arguable whether doing silly stuff and bringing joy, or, helping serve food and distribute necessary goods, obviously those are both valuable things for society. And if we don't have some silliness, maybe life's not worth living. But who knows? I'm really not someone who's good at just talking off the cuff, which is how I decided to do this. But I don't think it would have been very much better if I wrote it out beforehand. I'm not a very good writer either, so I did my best.